can be seated. Good morning. Thank you again for being here promptly. As you will note, present in the courtroom, Ms. Brochu, Mr. Lavoie, Mr. Dunham, Mr. Kadams, Mr. Webster, Ms. Trapez, and Mr. Malone. I'm going to take attendance again this morning and ask you again each to indicate out loud that you are here today. Juror number 1, Raymond Domina. Juror number 2, Marcia Hagwood. Juror 3, Frank Leonard. Juror 4, Kayla Lesbrons. Juror 5, Joshua Hammond.
Present.
Juror 6, Ann Lansbury.
Present.
Juror 7, Wayne Bombard.
Present.
Juror 8, Cynthia Curry.
Present.
Juror 9, Brian Perry.
Present.
Juror 10, Kimberly Bourbeau.
Present.
Juror 11, Nancy Willette.
Present.
Juror 10, Diane Quebec.
Present.
Madeline Tatro. Juror 13.
Present.
Juror 14, Lori Miller.
Present.
Juror 15, Joanne Reed.
Present.
Juror 16, Ronald West.
Present.
I'm going to ask you the same questions that I have been asking you each day. First, please indicate by raising your hand if the answer is yes. Since you were selected as jurors, have you learned anything new about any aspect of the case, the defendant, the attorneys, or anyone in the case? No juror raises his or her hand. Have you become aware of any information or any media account about this case about which you were not aware at the time you were selected and you now recall and might influence you? No juror raises his or her hand. Has anyone talked to you about this case? This means either anyone outside of the jury or a fellow juror. No one raises his or her hand. Is there any reason why you cannot fairly and impartially evaluate the evidence in this case and deliver a just verdict? No juror raises his or her hand. All right then. Mr. Lavoie, do you have a witness? Mr. Dunham.
Your Honor, we just asked that the court ask jurors if they watched any news, including national news or CNN and those sorts of things.
Okay, so that is the question. Has anyone watched any national news or any local news about this case? CNN, anything? Has anyone seen anything about this case online? Heard anything in the on the radio?
Your Honor, we weren't thinking about this case. We were just thinking about other news.
Oh, any news at all?
Yeah.
Okay, what's the relevance of any news at all? So there's one additional question. Just indicate, please, by raising your hand. Simply, has anyone watched any national news since last night, since we adjourned yesterday? Okay, so one juror is raising her hand. This is juror 10, Ms. Bourbeau. So you have seen the national news, yes? Okay. Is there anything else from the parties?
No, Your Honor.
Not at this time, Your Honor.
Okay. So then we'll proceed. Do you have a witness, Mr. Lavoie?
We do, Your Honor. The state's going to call Dr. Stephen Shapiro.
I do.
Tell us your name, please, sir.
Stephen with a V, Shapiro, Shapiro.
What do you do for a living, sir?
Currently, I'm employed as Chief Medical Examiner for the state of Vermont.
Tell us about your training and experience, please.
I did undergrad in medical school here at the University of Vermont, finishing up medical school in 1993. From there, I did a combined residency program in anatomic pathology and clinical pathology at the Oregon Health Sciences University out in Portland. My final year in Portland, I spent working mostly with the medical examiner's office for the state of Oregon, also in Portland, before doing a formal fellowship in forensic pathology at the city of New York. Spent 2 years working as a city medical examiner in New York City, mostly in the Bronx County office, before moving to Vermont in 2001 as a deputy medical examiner. They appointed me chief in, I believe it was September 2006.
What does a forensic pathologist do?
Forensic pathology is essentially the study of public suffering. In practicality, my office reviews all the deaths in the state. Specifically, we're involved in sudden, violent, unexpected deaths, some deaths that come to us as a matter of law, and we issue death certificates, we do autopsies. That's pretty much what my office does.
As part of your responsibilities, were you asked to perform an autopsy on the body of Anna Alger?
I was.
And when did you perform that autopsy?
On September the 26th, year 2013, I'm referring to my autopsy report there. I started that autopsy about 9:30 in the morning.
Now, I've placed a sticker on your package of notes that states number 52, correct?
Correct.
Given the number of autopsies that you perform, will it be necessary for you to refer to states number 52 in order to recall the details of this particular autopsy?
That's correct.
When Ms. Alger's body arrived at the medical examiner's office, what happened to it?
What happened to it? Procedure for performing an autopsy. An autopsy is essentially a medical procedure performed on a deceased person. Our standard procedure is the body's arrived, it's assigned a number, a case number. For Ms. Alger, it was 2013 for the year, case number 1092. So we had just assigned sequential numbers for all the deaths we investigate, not necessarily we do an autopsy on. The bodies came in a sealed body bag. Cases of this nature come in under chain of custody. We photograph that, we document it, we open up the bag, we examine the body externally. All during this process we're photographing for documentary purposes. We do standard physical exam kind of things, height, weight, general demographics. We look at the outside of the body, looking for diseases or injuries. Then we go through a series of surgical-like incision to follow up on the injuries or diseases inside the body. We examine all the organs, all the body systems, the inside of the organs. In case with penetrating injuries such as Ms. Alger, we'll do x-rays, seeing what's going on in there, all to really come up with the ultimate cause of death, what killed this person.
Were you able to determine the cause of death in Ms. Alger's case?
I was.
And what was the cause of death?
Mrs. Alger died from gunshot wounds.
What is a penetrating gunshot wound?
We use the term penetrating to mean the bullet enters the body and doesn't exit, as opposed to perforating where it goes all the way through.
How many penetrating gunshot wounds did you observe to Ms. Alger's body?
She had 1 to her head and 6 to her torso, her body, and also one perforating gunshot wound to her soft tissues, to her torso.
And again, you said the perforating gunshot wound is one that enters and then exits.
That's correct.
And you said that the procedure is photographed, correct?
Yes.
And there were photographs that were done in this case.
Yes.
Where on Ms. Alger's body did you observe the various wounds? You told us about the shot to the head. Where were the other wounds?
As I said, there were multiple wounds. The one to her head was in the right side of her head. There was one to the right side of her mid to lower back. There was 4 to her sort of left shoulder area in the back. And the perforation one was to her sort of right hip area that went through the soft tissue.
Let me show you states number 37 for identification. Do you recognize what this is a picture of?
I do.
And what is it a picture of?
This is a picture of the gunshot wound of Miss Alger's chest, Anna's chest.
This area of flesh in the lower right quadrant, is that her breast?
That is.
And is states number 37 a true and accurate representation of the wound to Ms. Alger's chest?
It is.
Is this an entrance wound or an exit wound?
It's an entrance wound.
Although it's probably obvious from the terminology, an entrance wound is the point at which the bullet enters the body.
That's correct.
We offer states number 37, Your Honor.
For context, can I ask a question?
Yes.
So where did this, can you point to where this, point to me to where this wound was on
This
the body?
is sort of right to the right of her her sternum, the midline of the chest. That's.
No, okay.
And then, Mr. Dunham indicated that it would offer you additional argument regarding the court's written ruling. Did you have additional argument?
Not on this offer here.
Okay, so 37 then is admitted without objection?
And again, I have my index finger over her breast, correct?
That's correct.
May I publish 37 now?
Any objection?
No.
You'll just publish that by walking it?
Correct.
That's fine. Can you tell me what states 35 is a picture of?
Stage 35 is a picture of Miss Alger's head showing the right side. Our autopsy case number is clearly visible, as well as the marking I used to keep track of what we were photographing. This is an entrance wound on the right side of her head. The skin has been shaved, or the scalp has been shaved around the wound to better visualize the wound. That was done by me.
And what is stage number 36 a picture of?
36 is a picture of Anna's under her chin area, which is sort of a partial exit. The wound to her right side partially exited. The bullet was retained, but it came out to the skin, caused a little laceration, and that's what we're seeing there.
And what is stage 50 a picture of?
Stage 50 is a photograph of Miss Alger's head. Once again, you can see our autopsy number, our case number there. It shows skull fractures clearly visible. There's some hypodense or hyperdense white fragments. Those are little metallic particles related to the bullet, as well as the bullet, which is sitting in really what would be her jaw. It's actually in the soft tissue in the tongue, but you can see it clearly in the jaw.
And stage number 50 is an X-ray type photograph?
It's a
Photograph of an X-ray?
It's a photograph of an X-ray, correct.
And are all of these photos that I've just shown you, are they true and accurate representations? Well, let's start with 35 and 36. Are those true and accurate representations of what you saw when you examined Ms. Alger's body?
They are, yes.
And 50 is a true and accurate representation of the X-ray, correct?
That's correct.
Your Honor, the state offers 35, 36, and 50.
Any objection?
No objection to 35, 36 and 50, and I did have a further argument on 35.
So you said 36 and 50, you have no objection, correct?
Correct.
36 and 50 are admitted without objection. What's the argument regarding 35?
Should I approach?
Yes. All of those photographs, 35, 36, and 50 are admitted, 35 over the defendant's objection. Any objection?
They should be published all at the same time.
Do you intend to go one after the other, or are you just going to do?
It's going to be one after the other. I want to do 36 and 50 together because 50 is the X-ray of that work.
That's fine. If you're about to do them all, that's fine.
So this is it's 35. The wound is on what side of her head, please?
It's the right side. You can see her right ear in the photograph. Her nose is not in the photograph, but it would be at the top of the photograph.
And the wound is in the center of the shaved portion.
That's correct.
36 is an exit wound under her chin.
Partial exit wound.
The bullet that went in the right side, part of it came out there as depicted in 36, and the other portion was retained in 50.
That's correct.
And 50 is an X-ray that would show the bullet as a darker spot where my index finger is.
That's correct. I would call it a brighter, whiter spot.
Is that wound a fatal wound?
In and of itself, it would be. Yes.
What is states number 38 a picture of?
States number 38 is a picture of Ms. Alger's, Anna's that would be sort of the top of the right breast, sort of a little lateral on to the side, and that is another partial exit wound. I recovered a bullet directly underneath that. You'll see some surrounding purple contusion. That's because the bullet came out into the skin, caused a little tear, but didn't have enough energy left to actually exit the body. Caused a lot of damage to the surrounding tissues, and that's why it's all purple and bruised under there.
In reference to the other injury that we observed on the chest, which I think was marked by you with your letter B, is X above or below B?
It's slightly above and lateral to the side, to her right side.
So X is about here,
Correct.
and B was about there?
Correct.
Nature of the objection.
First he's pointing and he's pointing above his breast.
Okay, so you can cross-examine regarding
Well,
the
he's
location.
not clear, there's no illustration of
Could you, Doctor, please
So,
just...
to the extent that there was an objection, the objection is overruled. You can explore the location of the wounds on cross-examination, but I would also indicate that, Mr. Lavoie, if you are doing a physical demonstration, you need to describe that for the record.
Yep. Doctor, could you describe for the record, please, where I am pointing?
I would call that the subclavicular region or supramammary region above the right breast.
Is where Mr. Lavoie is pointing with his right index finger.
That's correct.
Okay, and then with his left index finger?
I would describe that as parasternal, next to the sternal on the right side.
So right index finger is an approximation of your X, and left is an approximation of your B, correct?
Correct.
We'd offer state 38 here.
Any objection?
no objection to the picture, as the publication, we wait until
I don't think I can publish it now, Your Honor.
Okay, so there is no objection. 38 is admitted without objection. Let's let Mr. Fleming mark that before you continue.
Yes, Your Honor. Let me show you states number 33 for identification. What is states number 33 a picture of?
This is a picture of Ms. Alger's Anna's back, essentially from her hip region to about the level of her ears, the back of her head at the ear level. It shows multiple gunshot wounds, and there's labels on them. It has 5 gunshot wounds labeled C, D, E, F, and G at the upper portion of her body, as well as Y, which is down on her right hip region.
And this is a true and accurate representation of what you saw when you were performing the autopsy?
It is.
Of these wounds, how many of these are entrance wounds?
These are all entrance wounds.
We offer
that's-
33, Your Honor.
Any objection?
I have no objection. I have no additional objection.
I just want to see the parties at the bench regarding that, but I'm not sure the doctor completed his answer. Did you?
Yeah, the Y in that is not an exit wound. That is an exit wound.
Not an entrance, it's an exit.
The Y is an exit.
So it is an exit. And then I just want to see the parties at the bench on that.
So I've done as the court requested, Your Honor, and shown that to Mr. Dunn.
Okay.
And why on that hip region was the wound that you classified as exit?
That's correct.
So 33 was offered. Was there any additional objection then, Mr. Dunham?
No, Your Honor.
So 33 is admitted without objection.
I'm going to focus that on, Your Honor.
Any objection? Was there
I
objection?
thought he was going to publish the two, that one together with
You can publish that, that's fine.
You were able to testify earlier that the head wound by itself would have been a fatal wound.
Potentially, yes.
Can you tell how many of the wounds depicted in 33 would have been fatal wounds by themselves?
Well, yes and no.
So tell me the yes and no.
Okay, so when there's multiple gunshot wounds, groupings closely as you saw they are, trying to track down the individual wound paths through the body and which exact organs each bullet is hitting and becomes very difficult. So I sort of group them, and there's a bunch of injuries, which we can talk about, but some of these injuries would not be fatal. A fractured humerus, upper arm fracture, people will live through that. Other injuries such as perforations of the lungs or the aorta, very potentially lethal injuries. So which of those caused all those injuries or specific injuries, that I can't tell you. But having said that, all of these injuries in them of themselves, even a humeral fracture, are potentially lethal injuries. Does that make sense?
Yeah. You recovered actual bullets and bullet fragments from the body, is that correct?
That's correct.
Continue questioning at the podium unless you're actively using the photos or an exhibit.
Well,
Because you're just questioning right next to it.
so you removed bullets and bullet fragments from the body.
I did.
And we've had testimony in the case that the weapon used to inflict these injuries was a 9mm Ruger using hollow point ammunition. In your experience, what effect does that sort of ammunition have when the bullet enters the human body?
Any perforating injuries by lead projectiles is very inconvenient for your body. Having said that, the hollow point bullets are designed to stay in the target, to release all that kinetic energy to the target. So most of these bullets did what they're supposed to do. When you talk about kinetic energy in bullets, bullet will travel as a 9mm somewhere in the range of 800 to 1,200 feet per second. That's their muzzle velocity. So if you think it comes in at a velocity and exit at a different velocity, the change in that velocity is, you can calculate the kinetic energy transferred to the body. Hollow point bullets are designed so that they don't exit, so all the kinetic energy is transferred to the body.
Let me show you stage number 34 for identification. What is 34 a picture of?
This is a picture of the wound that we labeled Y, and this is her right sort of upper hip region in the posterior, the back part of her body. That is the exit wound of what I described, the perforating defect. So this bullet went all the way through, just hit soft tissue.
And is that a true and accurate representation of that area as you saw it when you performed the autopsy?
It is.
We offer 34, Your Honor.
Any objection?
No.
34 is admitted without objection.
Let me show you stage number 51 for identification. What is 51 a picture of?
51 is a picture of an X-ray of Ms. Alger's lower body from probably her mid-pelvis to her xiphoid or chest region, right about there, just at the bottom of the ribs. You can see some of her lower ribs there. You can see her spine and her pelvis. There are 4 intact bullets and multiple bullet fragments.
The bullet fragments are these brighter white dots, so to speak?
When you take an X-ray, the metallic portions, the portions that the X-rays don't penetrate, show up as bright white. So the larger portions are the bullets. The little fragments are fragments.
We offer stage 51, Your Honor.
Any objection?
No objection.
51 51 is admitted without objection. Any objection? Mr. Dunham, any objection to publishing 51?
No.
Okay.
When Ms. Alger's body came to you, was there clothing present?
There was.
And as part of the examination procedure, you also document the clothing.
We do.
And she was wearing both a shirt and a hoodie, is that correct?
That's not correct.
Tell me.
Ms. Alger was transported emergently to the hospital. The hospital personnel cut off the body, or cut off the clothing to try to save her. The clothing was recovered, I assume, by law enforcement and sent along with the body in sealed bags. When it came to our office, it accompanied the body. Detective Sergeant Dennis, who works with me, I think it was Matt at this time. Hold on one second. Yes, Sergeant Dennis from the state police is assigned to our office. He helps us out in the back room, takes the photographs as well as the. So Matt opened the bags, we photographed them, I looked at them briefly, and then they were all transferred once we dried them, and then transferred them down to the crime lab in Waterbury.
So let me show you states number 30 for identification. What is this a picture of?
This is a picture of a shirt of Miss Alger's who came in to our office. It has been cut. It's laid out on a white sheet. You can see the autopsy number on top, 2013-1092, and it shows the multiple gunshot wounds, perforating defects.
So these white dots are the paper showing through the holes in the garment.
The sheet, correct.
And states number 32, what's that a picture of?
This is the same sort of image, but this is a red shirt that she had been wearing, and it again shows the multiple gunshot wounds, which line up very nicely with the green shirt.
And these are true and accurate depictions of those pieces of clothing?
They are.
Here we are for 30 and 32. 30 is the green shirt and 32 is the red.
Any objection?
No.
30 and 32 are admitted without objection.
When you're performing the autopsy, you take some notes, is that correct?
I do.
And the notes that you took as part of this autopsy, we have as a portion of states number 52, is that correct?
That's correct.
And I'm now placing a sticker specifically on one page, which I'm going to steal from you. States number 53, What is states number 53?
So, states number 53 is a photocopy of the autopsy notes, which I take during the time of the autopsy. It has a basic generic body diagram, which I try and use to put things where they are. My messy handwriting is clearly apparent. On these, my way of doing it is circles are entrance wounds, squares are exits, and triangles are where I recover bullets. Just the way I do it.
And the letters on here, X, B, T, Y, etc., they correspond to the stickers that we saw in the photographs that we've admitted.
Yes, they do.
And this is, 53 is a true and accurate copy of your notes. It's a photocopy of the original.
That's correct.
And you haven't made any additional changes to that since you did the autopsy.
As far as I know, no.
We offer 53, Your Honor, specifically in conjunction with 33 and the other prior photographs of the body, which showed letters over the wounds. The diagram will be helpful to the jury reviewing those photos.
Any objection?
I do it this time, but ultimately I won't, but may I inquire?
Yes.
Okay, so your notes have some other letters that we haven't mentioned yet, is that correct?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, so let's, starting on the front, you have B, which is the entrance wound to the chest from the front,
That's correct.
and where is how have you marked the entrance wound for the perforating injury to the right flank?
That is, it's sort of just drawn on there in this region. You can see it says perf, right flank, 21 inches below the top of the head, approximately 2 inches right of anterior midline, 3/4 inch, roughly round, defect, 1/2 inch eccentric marginal abrasion. These are just my autopsy notes about,
Where on the diagram is
there's a line pointing to this region here.
so one of these two marks?
Yes.
So then so is that one of the marks?
It's the lower mark, not marked.
It's unmarked?
It probably doesn't have a letter to it.
Would be possible to label it?
It would be as confusing as all the other labels.
Can you circle it in blue pen?
Your Honor, I'm not offering it in that fashion. I'm offering it as it is. It's not misleading or confusing. It was offered for a specific purpose, Your Honor. If Mr. Dunn wants to make his own offer.
It depicts an entrance wound that's not marked and not,
During cross-examination, if you want him to use the exhibit, if it is admitted to further clarify some of the wounds, you can certainly do that. So do you have an objection to the admission of the exhibit as it is now?
on the back there are other letters that you haven't referred to as well, is that correct?
Yeah, there's a lot of, there's mostly the letters that are not referred to are the ones that, oh, not on the back. No, we talked about all those.
Your Honor, this isn't voir dire. This is not foundational.
I'm not sure at this point.
Well, there's an S and a T. Correct?
Yes. Those are indicated with triangles where I recovered bullets.
Oh, I think. And the, is that a Z up there?
That's a Z.
And that's related to the head injury?
That is
Okay.
a circle, that is the entrance wound.
I have no objection. No objection.
That was 53.
Yes, Your Honor.
53 is admitted without objection.
Right. That's all I have, Your Honor.
Cross.
Okay. So,
Before we do that, Mr. Lavoy, you had asked this witness some preliminary questions about education. What were those? Did you qualify?
To qualify him as an expert in the area of forensic pathology.
Are you asking the court to do that?
Well,
I don't believe
I
that's
don't-
a stipulation.
I don't know that that's required by the rules of evidence, but yes, Your Honor, we would offer him as an expert in the area of forensic pathology.
Any objection?
No.
He's so qualified. You can begin your cross.
so describe the subject in
I don't know what is in my head about that. The height and weight thing.
how she presented the size.
I think I know what Mr. Dunham's asking. Ms. Alger Anna was a normally developed, healthy 31-year-old woman. She was 5 foot tall, 193 pounds, with a body mass index of 37. She was an obese woman. She had no significant underlying health issues, no heart disease, no kidney disease, no cancer, no congenital defects. She was an otherwise healthy woman. Her biggest health issue would be her size, her obesity. Other than that, does that answer your question, sir?
Well, her hair was tied in a ponytail, is that correct?
Yes, wavy blonde hair, ranged approximately 15 inches and tied in a ponytail.
Now, what does it take for a person who's 5 foot to be considered obese? You know,
The obesity is defined by body mass index. Body mass index is sort of a medical term. It's your height, your weight, and it, I don't even remember what the units are. But I pretty much do this for anybody. By definition, anybody with a body mass index of over 30 is considered obese.
and what did you say that Hannah was?
And I calculated out, in my calculations, I go to the NIH website and I put in the things, the numbers, height and weight, and she came out to 37.7.
Okay, and this wound to the right chest was life-threatening, correct? The wound front to back, wound to the right chest.
Yes, that one, since it wasn't,
Well, at deposition, you testified it was life-threatening, correct?
yes,
Now,
don't recall, but this would be a life-threatening wound, yes.
now, the Vermont State Police use hollow point ammunition, isn't that true?
Yes, I think most law enforcement do.
It's ammunition used for protection?
Well, I guess you can say all ammunition is used for protection in some way or another. Law enforcement tend to use hollow point bullets as opposed to military, which tend to use full metal jacketed bullets. for different reasons. There's a lot of, if you're in a crowded place, you're a law enforcement officer, you want the bullet to hit your target and stay in the target and not hit the 3 innocent people behind you. So that is really the underlying reason why law enforcement tend to use hollow point bullets, so they don't exit the body. My understanding of that.
Okay, so there's also a front to back injury in the right flank.
That's correct.
Okay, so I'm going to put can you have me place my finger where the injury is?
You're pretty close. You took my notes away, but you're pretty close.
I'm just on my belt line, is that correct?
Yeah, I'd say that's about right.
And that entered and exited, re-entered, and ended up coming out down in the butt.
Correct.
I think I'm about 3 inches, I can't see, two and a half inches from below my belt.
Yeah, I'd say that's a fairly accurate representation.
Okay, so in the same way that you described what Mr. LeBoy was doing, Mr. Dunham's left index finger is pointed where?
At the entrance, and his right is sort of the exit, and there was in between those two is another entrance and exit. This bullet perforated through a fold in the skin, entered, exit, re-entered, and then exited.
And so his left index finger is just above his belt line?
That's about right. I can give you exact measurements.
Okay. That doesn't matter now.
The wound centered, the entrance wound 21 inches below the top of the head and approximately 12 inches right of anterior midline. She was a little bigger than you, so
And then his right index finger is at the back.
at the back exit, that was the defect that has been labeled Y in the photos.
The injury to the head is I won't point because then I got to put it in the record, was slightly back to front and down,
Back to front and down, correct.
but as you stressed, slightly back to front and down, correct?
I described this wound in my report as the overall trajectory of the bullet is from the decedent's right to left, slightly back to front and down.
This is where Steve is so helpful.
And
This detailed shit.
Yes, sir.
Steve.
Okay, so is it a matter of volume, or you didn't capture the answer?
I didn't catch the question and the answer.
Okay, so we're going to actually have that read back by Mr. Forney, and then we're going to ask everybody to keep their voices up. So if you could just read back the last question and the last answer.
Question, but actually said slightly back to front and down, correct? Answer, I described this one in my report as the overall trajectory of the bullet, right to left, slightly back to front and down.
You can ask more, clarifying, that's fine.
So we're speaking of the head injury?
Yes.
Okay.
One moment, please. So at deposition, you called, used a technical word for in reference to Anna, but Anna, you indicated that the target is falling. By that you meant Anna was falling?
I don't know what the context that was in the deposition, but in my report, I described under all the wounds to the body, as we talked about a little before, hard to keep track of all these trajectories through the body, and I made a comment parenthetically to try and explain that in the report.
Difference in the deviation can be attributed to the body following during the shooting?
Yes, this was under the subsection penetrating gunshot wounds of left upper back, which I identified as C, E, F, and G in the photographs. And under trajectories, I described the general overall trajectories of all 4 bullets are back to front, left to right, and down, with the comment that the differences in vertical deviations, the top to bottom, up and down, can be attributed to the body falling between shots. These are fluid situations.
And so it's and so the grouping in the back are all part of the same sequence, correct?
You know, there's really no way for me to exactly tell which one came first or second and third, you know, just looking at the body. You know, through experience, through a little common sense, yes, I would say those all happened, all this happened in the matter of a few seconds tops.
And in terms of where the shooting begins, the best way to determine that is by eyewitness, or an eyewitness to say the shooting started with the Anna facing the shooter. You would go with the eyewitness testimony as to the chest injury, the front chest injury being one of the early shots and the others following, as shooters following.
What I would say is we use eyewitness testimony to support anatomic findings. And yes, that scenario is very consistent with this, with the first wound being the chest wound and the subsequent wounds coming from that.
That's all I have here.
So the physical evidence would indicate that as she was falling, the shooter continued to shoot.
I would say yes. Not inconsistent with that.
That's all I have, Your Honor.
On that question, anything, Mr. Dunham?
No.
Yeah.
Yours.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Oh, okay. Thanks a lot, Steve.
We recall Ben Kuchar, Your Honor.
I need to.
Yes, I do.
Detective Kuchar, as part of the process of taking someone into custody, is their height and weight noted?
Yes.
How tall is Mr. Webster?
Objection, Your Honor.
Nature of the objection?
I'd ask first to determine what the source of that, whether they did a wait him, or whether they just used the license.
Okay, that would be the subject for cross. You can certainly do that. Is there other objections?
Objection for lack of foundation, Your Honor.
Okay, Mr. Roy?
I'm sorry, is the objection?
Sustained.
So you were about to tell me an answer, don't tell me. Where would that answer have come from?
Identification sheet.
And the information on the identification sheet that relates to an individual, where does that information come from?
Usually the defendant.
And in this case, where did it come from?
The defendant.
So how tall was he?
Approximately 6'3".
And how much did he weigh?
Approximately 280.
And that's what he told you, 6'3", 280 pounds.
That would be on the identification sheet.
That's all I have here.
Anything on that then, Mr. Dunham? Excuse me.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is that area of Main Street between, let's say, Lake Street to the area where the shooting occurred. On September 25th, 2013, was that a public highway?
Yes, it is.
It was open to the general flow and circulation of traffic.
Yes, it is.
Anything on that?
No.
Your excuse. Thank you. Other witnesses then?
Your Honor, I'd ask the court to take the recess now, and we may not, but I need to confer with Ms. Brochu.
Okay. If you intend to rest, the question, you need to do that in front of the jury, though.
I understand.
All right then. So we'll take a break for 5 or 10 minutes. All rise.